Hello everyone, my name is Shao, and today I'll be talking about my economic goal, which is about the economic freedom in Australia. The question here is, how does the relatively high percentage of GDP used for government expenditures affect the economic freedom in Australia? Metrics. I looked at the three metrics: taxation, military spending, and GDP per capita. These were the only three metrics offered that seems to be related to economic freedom. It does not seem that any of the other available metrics are related to the economic freedom. However, I combined taxation with GDP to create a metric that is a better measure of economic freedom, which is the percentage of GDP that is used for government expenditures. I found data in the CIA handbook and other sources to calculate this metric for the countries that had low tax burdens, as tax burden is a measure of economic freedom. It is about economic freedom. My goal is economic freedom, which is defined by the Heritage Foundation as economic freedom is the fundamental right of every human to control his or her own labor and property. In an economically free society, individuals are free to work, produce, consume, and invest in any way they please. In economically free societies, governments allow labor, capital, and goods to move freely and refrain from coercion or constraint of liberty beyond the extent necessary to protect and maintain liberty itself. So here are the steps. So the first step was to look at the metric for each country to see if any of them looked like the outliers. Among the highest scoring countries of Ireland, the United States, and Australia, the percentage of GDP that represents government expenditure is higher for Australia than the other two countries. The next step was to look for other metrics that might explain this or show the effect of this disparity. Here, the data from the CIA handbook shows government spending as a percent of GDP in 2017 for the three high-scoring countries to be Ireland equals 25%, Australia equals 36%, the USA equals 20%. The data from the CIA handbook showed government spending as a percentage of GDP in 2017 for the three high-scoring countries to be Ireland equals 25%, Australia equals 36%, the USA equals 20%. When looking at a different data source, theglobaleconomy.com, I found the following: Ireland equals 12%, Australia equals 19%, and the USA equals 14%. So the data from the CIA handbook showed government spending as a percent of GDP in 2017 for the three high-scoring countries to be Ireland equals 25%, Australia equals 36%, and the USA equals 20%. When looking at a different data source, theglobaleconomy.com, I found the following: Ireland equals 12%, Australia equals 19%, and the USA equals 40%. A third source, OECD data from the data.oecd.org, reported these numbers for 2018. Ireland equals 25.1%, Australia equals 38.6%, and the USA equals 37.8%. This is the index of economic freedom. The Heritage Foundation Index of Economic Freedom, heritage.org, showed that all of the three countries have relatively high scores for economic freedom, with Ireland 8.9 and Australia 82.6 scoring somewhat higher than the USA 76.6. This conclusion is consistent with our three data sources reporting government spending as a percent of GDP. The next steps are: my next step will be to explore other ways to measure economic freedom. The metrics available for this assignment are not necessarily the best determinants of economic freedom. The Heritage Foundation Index of Economic Freedom uses 8 categories of data: trade freedom, fiscal freedom, government spending, monetary freedom, investment freedom, financial freedom, property rights, and freedom for corruption. Each category has several metrics. I will evaluate these metrics to better understand how they measure the economic freedom of a nation. This is the conclusion. While Australia appears to be an outlier with a higher percent of its GDP going to government expenditures, there is some inconsistency in the data from different sources. However, the data generally supports the conclusion of the Heritage Foundation that ranks all three countries as having more economic freedom than most of the nations.